Hey, you guys. Welcome back to Tell Me Why You're Special. I am Brandon Lynette, your favorite podcast host. And this is the arena, you guys. If you're new here, good. Please stay because what happens in the space is not what you're used to. We don't do the highlight reels. We don't curate success narratives, just real people telling the real truth about what it cost them to build something and literally who they had to become in the process. And today's guest has been in the room, the C suite room, the boardroom where the decisions get made and numbers get hit, and nobody asks how you're doing on the inside. She scaled something significant. She held organizations together while her own life is pulling apart at the seams. And then she wrote a book about it because she was done pretending the two things weren't happening at the same time. And Chelsea, welcome to the show today.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited. So my first question for most of my guests right out the gate is your elevator pitch. You're in the hot seat. Who are you? What did you build? What did it cost you?
Sure. I'm the worst at giving elevator pitches, but I'm going to try.
We're
Um,
it's on the show.
I'm a former teacher turned executive, startup executive. So I started my career as a Teach for America math teacher in Oakland, California. Um, really kind of got the bug for education, went to grad school, met a guy. There are lots of tangents on that story. But long story short, in 2013, I landed in New York and joined an education technology startup. And so I never thought of myself as someone who would be in the tech industry at all, let alone having leadership roles. But kind of through this windy road, I transitioned from teacher to education specialist in ed tech and then became a leader at multiple startups.
That's
So yeah,
amazing.
that's my elevator pitch.
That was fantastic. And first of all, why is it always about a guy? Why do they do that?
Right?
Why do they
I
do that?
know.
I get that. I think it's amazing also you literally moved across the United States, like from one side to the next. That would be incredible.
I actually moved from Oakland to London for grad school, met the guy, moved to Hong Kong, moved to Italy, and then moved to New
What?
York.
I feel like the show's going off the rails. I want the tea right now. That is insane. So how
Yeah. Oh, well, I can definitely take you down that road, but the short story is I met my then boyfriend, now husband, in a salsa dancing club in London when I was in grad school. We were like the only single people under 50, and he's Italian, like Italian, Italian, not like New York Italian.
right?
So we decided to live in a third country together and then moved to Italy and then moved to New York.
That's amazing. So that's my daughter's dream right now is to meet. Well, she did meet, right? She'd kill me. I'm glad she doesn't listen to my stuff, okay? But like she meets this really cute Italian boy that's in college with her, traveling abroad. He's studying abroad. And it didn't work out with them, but she's literally going to Italy this coming week for 2 weeks. And I'm like, girl, what if you really do meet him? Like that's her whole, she's manifested this. So I feel
I
like
mean,
it's probably gonna happen for her. Should I give her the name of the salsa club? You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. I gotta look it up, but it's in the Queen's Park area of London. So
That's
yeah,
amazing. It's so
it
fun.
worked for me.
Yeah. That's so funny. And congratulations. It's nice. You met your prince and you had to go through a lot to get there. And I think that's incredible.
Thanks. Yeah, we both did, but it was worth it.
Yeah, that's fabulous. Okay, you guys, I'll get back on track. This is not my relationship podcast, so I do have a great one of those as well. But so something that caught me off guard when, I'm reading up, I'm doing my homework, and you use the word stitching to describe what you were doing inside these organizations, like holding the fabric together while things were scaling fast. And I want to know like what that we could see. Like I know you guys could see the visual because I did. I you could see the visual the way you speak about it, but I want to know what like that felt like from the inside because stitching implies something is always on the verge of coming apart. Is that what it was like?
Yeah, yeah. Um, when you are joining a high pressure startup, and I'm sure people feel like this in ERs and all other kinds of careers, but from my background being in startups, we say it's like you're building the plane and trying to fly it at the same time.
Ooh.
And that also means that things are really high pressure, tensions are high. Oftentimes people ask investors for millions of dollars, which I still think is a crazy thing that people do, but they do it all the time. And then they know they have 3 years or 2 years to try to make something worthwhile, and 9 out of 10 times it's going to fail. So pressure's high, and the people relationships are a lot more important than I thought they would be before I was kind of in this world. I viewed leaders as like people marching around saying, I am the boss, I'm in charge, I'm so, look at me, I'm so brilliant. But so much of it is like listening to people and sitting with them and hiring smart people and actually listening to what they have to say.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I feel like in that space where it is that high pressure situation, you really get to know people. Like you see the real person. You can't really hide your true self in situations like that.
Yes, and that is a can be a blessing and a curse depending how authentic you are. And you really see what people's values are. So I have been in some executive teams where like it literally felt like Game of Thrones, right? It was, I mean, nobody died, but
Right.
it was pretty intense, and it felt like there was scheming,
Yeah.
and the thing is like no good work ever really got done because everyone was kind of looking out for themselves. Um, so yeah, it you definitely get a sense for who you want to work with. And you also have to be really honest about the things you're not great at because things move so fast that if you don't ask for help, like the opportunity is gone.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. You call yourself a human infrastructure builder in a world that ideally measures infrastructure in systems and revenues and headcount. What does human infrastructure actually mean, and why does it keep getting left out of the growth conversation?
Yeah. I think of human infrastructure. Infrastructure can be load bearing, right? It's like what you can build a house upon or a city upon. And I think of it as having a baseline of relationships with a good culture and with trust that as there's chaos, everyone keeps rowing in the same direction. And I feel like when I say that, it feels very like feminine and fluffy, not to like throw femininity under the bus, but in the startup world, right, it can be like, okay, that's nice. She just wants to bring people together. But I think there's really a tangible like return on investment in that. People don't turn over as easily. People feel comfortable bringing each other ideas. You get better information, and you get information about when you're failing. And the things you're able to build with a team are astronomically better when you have that base to build everything upon.
Right. Well, we have the picture story, like you got your Prince Charming, you're a badass with high pressure. But what the audience doesn't know is that you were navigating clinical depression in the background of the boardroom. So I kind of want to go there because I think there's people listening right now who are doing the exact same thing and they believe that it's only them. Like it's just something's wrong with them. So, what did that actually look like on the day to day? And what were you managing that nobody in the room even knew about?
Yeah. So I think I like talking about this not only because we're all in the same boat, but I think I used to feel like, oh, if I have a mental health challenge, I'm not one of those people that could be a leader because like I'm not resilient. And it's really not about that, right? It's about like how you show up and navigate what you have. So what that looked like for me, I have since I was probably in college, depression started to show up like really in force. And at some point, did some therapy, did some medication, and having medication like changed my life. I describe it as like my world would come into color again. Before it would be like black and white. I was so drained and like sad one day that somebody saw me from like 30 feet across the quad and was like, "Hey, girl, you look really sad." I was like, I didn't even say anything to you. So that's how big like the cloud could become. And after college, remained on medication, did Teach for America, which was very like really fun, emotionally intense. All the smiles, all the tears. It was probably like the most rewarding and stressful job I have ever had. Um, but that kind of it gave me enough purpose to get up in the morning. And having something to show up for is great, but a lot of times my depression would show up with what happened after work. And so what that looked like while I was teaching was I would come home at like 4, uh, start watching TV and not finish until 10 p.m. and just like wake up and start again. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I would like avoid people's phone calls. And then the next day I would show up and be like, hey, are we ready to learn? And so it was kind of this like front that's crumbling behind. And then when I went to grad school, that increased. And I had a period of my life where I was like, I'm just going to will myself out of this. Plus, I have all these opportunities. I have a great education, a great support system. Like, I don't need any medicine. I'm fine. And I was not fine. So when I went to grad school, um, I got into a great grad school. I felt really good about it. Barely went to class. I sat in my apartment watching Gilmore Girls and knitting while like all of these cool things in the city of London around me were happening. And everything was just so hard. I still don't know how I made it through the first year because I did like so little work that was actually related to my schoolwork. But I would just try to like volunteer and do things to get myself out of the house because as soon as I'd go home, everything crumbled. And so, what that looked like later, I had some other experiences. I mentioned like living abroad, lived in Hong Kong, and I lived in Italy. And in Italy, it started to get pretty bad again. Um, and then we moved to New York, and that's when I got my first startup job. And that was very like engrossing. I still had very little to give at the end of the day. But things really hit the fan when I had my first big executive role, and at the same time, we were trying to get pregnant.
Yeah.
And um, I'm sure folks listening and watching like have gone through infertility. It's really common. But it was really hard. It was really hard for me. I know there are people out there that are like, if it happens, it happens. And I admire them so much. I'm not built that way. I would feel like every month I was just failing. Like it wasn't, and I also felt like my life was in limbo. Like if you're a woman and you're in a company, you need parental leave. But I couldn't leave to go to another company because you had to have 12 months of tenure to be able to get that. And so there was like a cost to everything. And it made me feel like I was so stuck in one place. Um, and that depression got really bad to where like I could just make myself like show up on a video call and then I would like have to not talk to anybody for like an hour. And so it was just trying to like mask all of those things in the background. And then when I got pregnant with my daughter, we went through some treatments and did IUI. And I kind of thought that like, okay, things are going to get better now, right? Like it happened.
Yeah.
Yay, great. They did not.
No.
They did not. So my first trimester, I remember like feeling just so sad. I could barely get out of bed, and anything anyone would ask me to do, like, hey, like go for a walk, you'll feel better, call your friend. Like, nope. I everything was like excruciatingly hard. And I remember just feeling so guilty because like I wanted this. I struggled for like we struggled for so long to get pregnant. Um, and I had some folks asking me like, "Oh, well, do you want to be a mom if you're really feeling this way? You know, like should be overjoyed." It's like, all right, women aren't robots, but sure. But you know, it's there's a lot of pressure to feel to project that you're fine. And so that was happening both in like my personal life and in my professional life. And I remember at one point calling the nurse helpline because a really good friend of mine was just like, you need to, it's not going to get better. Like you need to call somebody. And I called the nurse helpline at the midwife clinic and was just like, just started sobbing. Like this poor nurse picked up the phone, was like, hi, how are you? I'm not okay. And she was actually the person that referred me to a mental health, like perinatal mental health clinic, which I think like probably saved my life and at least saved it was the basis for like letting me feel joy
Right.
with having my daughter later on, because I honestly don't think I would have been able to feel those kinds of feelings if I hadn't had help at the time.
Yeah. There's a lot, there's so much here that I want to just unpack. Like this your story is incredible. But you talk about the invisible tax. That's your phrase. And so we're talking depression, infertility, you're leading at the highest level. Um we we see what that's done to you carrying that kind of weight without being able to set it down. Um is there ever a point like that shift you had where something had to give? It's never a perfect turnaround, but there a point where you were just like, okay, I could breathe, I get it now, and everything just kind of made sense again, the color was back?
Yeah, yeah. I think as far as getting healthy, some of it was like honestly like getting medication and treatment that I needed and not feeling guilty about it. But as far as that relates to work, it's also letting go of this image I had of myself of like I can run a company. Surely I should be able to run my personal life. And that's just not true. One thing that really helped me along the way when I was struggling the most, I had a woman leader. We had a leadership team that was like 60% female, which shouldn't be amazing, but it was.
Right.
And a chief marketing officer, actually, I had a one-on-one conversation with her and I was like, hey, I just want to let you know, like, if I seem off, just please tell me. I went through a miscarriage. We've had some tough times.
Yeah.
And she just sat with me and she was like, I went through that for 10 years and it's really fucking hard.
Aw.
And she just, that opening up also just made me feel like, oh, like I belong here. I'm not just like someone who has problems in the background and therefore like count me out as someone who can be a leader. And that was such a gift. So getting help, but also feeling less alone. And I think sharing is really important for that.
Yeah. And being able to share in your professional space, that's huge because that is not common. That is not common. No matter what you're going through, you're expected to show up and just perform while privately going through things that are breaking you open. So,
Yeah.
I think that's amazing. And I think that makes you a great leader because now you have that visibility to see that in other people, to be like, hey, you're carrying this, and that invisible tax is going to get you. And you
Yeah.
not there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really about like that psychological safety that creates the foundation of a really good team. Like my colleague, she didn't become my therapist, but she made me feel like that hierarchy of needs, right? Like I am safe to be here. I'm not failing because I'm a person that has things going on in the background. And honestly, as women, I think we often carry more emotional labor for our families, right? We keep people together. We often birth children. Like those are things that it's hard to talk about widely. And if you're with folks that have never had that experience, it can feel really isolating.
Yes, for sure. Um, so you say that a leader's hidden strengths come from their greatest failures, and I have a different perspective about failure that I think a lot of people do. But I want you to tell me what, because I haven't heard yet where you have failed at anything, but I want you to tell me about your greatest failure. Um, Maybe not even the one that taught you the best lesson, but the one that still has a little sting in it.
Yeah. So my stingiest failure happened right after college. So I uh, had a pretty good college career. I was very lucky. Academics came pretty easily to me. And I just thought like the work was going to be like that. Like,
Yeah.
this is great. I know how to be a student. Like, I'm a hard worker. It's all going to be fine. And I signed up for Teach for America. And at 23, I became a seventh grade math teacher in Oakland, in California, in a wonderful families and students that I taught. But it was like a high crime area, and all the students spoke Spanish except for one and me. And so I came in just thinking like, all right, like I care about social justice. I'm going to help provide these kids with an education, and I'm just going to will myself to be great at it. And I started out, and I was bad. I was a not a good teacher, not because I didn't care, but because like I did things that just were bad instruction. Like I brought a slide deck. I brought a PowerPoint to a group of 35 seventh graders who were just like, lady, you're teaching us math from a PowerPoint? Like we're gonna throw spitballs and probably tag the desks. Like
Yeah.
forget you know, you have no control. I think in my first week I forgot that people needed hall passes, and so I had like 15 students out of class at one time, and the recess person was like, here are your kids back. Um, but that said, like it really stung because nothing that I'd ever cared about just for me stung as much as feeling like I was failing
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
And there are some people that are, I do believe it's most of getting good at things are things that you haven't practiced yet.
Yeah.
But some people are really talented with kids. Like they're really charismatic and they're really funny. And I just wasn't. Like my thing was I was calm. That was my thing. Grew up around horses and stuff and was like, don't scare the critters. So I can stay calm in an emergency, but I was not super engaging. I was not super fun. And it took me a while. By the midpoint of the year, I was put on a performance improvement plan, and I was just like, I was heartbroken, but mostly because I had committed to doing this for 2 years, and I wasn't even going to make it a year because I was so bad at it. And like, I was placed here to try and do some good. And I remember I was crying in a supply room and called my supervisor at Teach for America, and I was like, I'm failing the kids.
Yeah.
I'm really bad at this. I have a performance improvement plan. I've never like had something like this. And she was like, hey, a PIP means that you have clear things that you can do. If you want to be a good teacher, just like forget about your feelings about failure and just do the work.
Yeah.
And it was such good advice. And by the end, I did get to where I felt like I was doing a lot better. And it took a lot of practice, but also kind of figuring out like what leadership style is authentic to me. Because kids can see through inauthenticity like miles away. And I think when I look back, I'm like, that was a such a good primer for working in the corporate world later.
Right.
But nothing's ever stung as much as feeling like these kids were unjustly behind and like I was contributing
Yeah.
to to making the situation worse.
Yeah. I could see that. Also, you gave the audience a great message, like forget about your feelings and just do the work. And I think that applies to so many things. Like forget about your feelings about it, just do the work.
Yeah,
That's
I
great advice.
and I get it. Like sometimes it's not easy, but also it's easy to get in your head, right? And make it about not make it about the outcomes. And that was some of the really good advice that my mentor gave me. She's like, okay, you say you're putting in a lot of effort. Doesn't make any difference that you're sending up like till 10 p.m. grading. The kids don't read your feedback. They don't care. And so it was like, do the work, but also measure what matters when you do the work.
Yeah.
And it's not about the effort you put in, it's about measuring what the output is. And when you do that, you can keep improving and tweaking things and making it better.
Yeah, I love that. I do want to talk about hustle culture because you say the narrative is broken, and I want to hear you make the case, not for those of us that already wholeheartedly agree and back you, but for the person listening who is deep in it right now, who is proud of how hard they're grinding, would hear hustle culture is broken and they feel personally attacked. What would you say to them?
Yeah, I would say it's a marathon, not a sprint. And you need to be, if you're training as a worker and a leader, you need to be training for that marathon. Um, Meaning, if you, I guess I have like two ways of thinking about this of
Yeah.
hustle culture. The first is that I think hustle culture, there's a really real stereotype around that. Oftentimes, we don't think about hustlers as women, at least in startup world, right? Like it to me, it's like kind of male, kind of broy. Folks that have like connections to other finance networks and they're like doing deals and they're scrappy. And I almost never like visualize, maybe it's my failing, but I almost never visualize a woman in that narrative,
Yeah.
even though women are like busting and multitasking all the time. they're just not talking about their work and they're not doing performative. I would say it's hustle culture is like performative, right? It's like I
Accolade.
am the I'm the busiest, right? So like therefore I'm the best. Um, so in that sense, kind of back to that idea of like measure what your outputs are. If a lot of your identity is around how much work you're doing, that's actually kind of not interesting to me because it doesn't have anything to do with how impactful your work is.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big part of it. And then also, yeah, it's in the long run, right? I've seen so many people burn out. Burnout is real, and like people will hit it at some point. Or you'll get to a point where your personal life has been so left behind that it's difficult for you to have the perspective to build and run a company because you've been so wrapped up in um, feeling like work is your identity. And then once that layoff happens, right? Or once the startup fails, like it can really break people and be hard for them to come back.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. So we're coming up to our time here, and I have a last question, and then I want you to tell us about your memoir, Course Correct, and how people can get resourced with you. But right now, we imagine there's a woman, it's my demographic. Okay, maybe late 30s, maybe early 40s. She is holding everything together at work. She's holding everything together at home, and she's literally falling apart, but she's never said it out loud to a single person. What is your message directly to her today?
Yeah, I would say being vulnerable doesn't make you weak. I've never been vulnerable with folks as a leader. And of course, I don't mean unprofessional, but I mean like, hey, I'm a human. This was hard. I've never had that backfire, actually, as fearful as people can be of that happening. Um, and I also think if if you feel like you have to hold it all together, and I think as women we do more. I don't see women like bombastically complaining about things at the office, right? Like I see men doing from time to time. Um, you're taxing yourself, right? You're taxing yourself because you're protecting everybody else's feelings and you're worrying about being a burden to them. And at some point that tax might get too high.
Yeah.
So um, yeah, I would say like if someone is afraid about showing that they can't hold it all together, um, try letting go a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think more likely than not, good things are going to happen as a result of that.
Yeah. Let's talk about Course Correct because you chose a memoir when you're obviously a business boss badass. You could have packaged all the strategy, the frameworks, and it could have been very safe, and you didn't. And I think that's amazing. So tell us why and tell us where we could find the book.
Sure. Um, I started writing a business book like that, and was like, what are the 7 principles of leadership that I can talk about? And then I realized I don't actually read those books.
Nope.
So I'm not going to write a book that I wouldn't want to read.
Right.
Um, And I don't think the world can be reduced to like a 2 by 2 matrix. Or if anyone's seen Silicon Valley, this guy has a poster called The Conjoined Triangles of Success in the background that he's always referencing, and it's ridiculous. Um, so the way I learn is through stories and through folks sharing their stories. And so when I went to say, okay, well, what's something that maybe only 3 people will read it, but what's something that might connect with folks, and let them see themselves in leadership and let them know they're not alone. And then writing a memoir became a lot more important. So that's what it became.
I love that. Chelsea, here's what I want you to know. What makes you special is not that you scaled a company to $100 million. What makes you special is that you told the truth about what it cost. You could have written a clean version about all of this, a strategy version, a version that keeps all the pretty stuff packaged and intact and it keeps your vulnerability at a safe distance. You didn't do that. You wrote the real deal, the boardroom and the depression, the growth and infertility, the success and everything ripping seams. And I do not take that lightly because that kind of honesty requires more courage than any funding round or revenue milestone ever will. And the fact that you're in this arena right now telling the story out loud means that some woman somewhere is going to read your book or hear this episode and realize for the first time that she is not broken. She is just carrying something nobody can see. And that realization might be the thing that saves her. Like you did that, and that matters. And I'm so grateful that you came on this show. To everyone listening, I mean, everyone, this show is for you, not the version of you that has all your shit figured out, not the version of you that's already on the other side of the hard thing, but like the version of you that's right here, right now, stitching yourself back together and hoping that nobody notices the seams. You guys, your mess is your message. And Chelsea just proved it. The depression, everything she's gone through, the invisible tax, all of that, that became the book, that became the work, that became the thing she uses to reach the very people who are still in the middle of everything she survived. She didn't wait till she was healed. She course corrected and then told the truth about the whole road. And that is what is available to you. Go get course correct. If you are a leader who is tired of performing wellness while quietly becoming undone, this book was literally written just for you. And the links are in the show notes. Make sure you guys come back here because I'm going to keep showing up in this arena week after week, making sure that the real stories are getting told because that is the only kind of story that's actually going to help anybody. So again, Chelsea, I appreciate your time so much. Thanks for coming on. And you guys, I'll see you in the arena.